Hey folks, thanks for downloading and subscribing to the Live Life Aggressively show. This is Sincere Hogan, got Mike Mahler on the other line. And man, we're coming off of a very interesting weekend in this world, in MMA and everything else, man. So
yeah, well, we'll probably talk to our guest about some of the things that happened in Paris, the UFC upset. There was a guy, I was just telling you before we started recording, there was a guy who was a sports bettor in Vegas who bet $21,000 on Holly for the win. Jeez. And he made $240,000. You know, man. Dana White said that so many people bet on Holly that at the Bellagio they actually had to shut down the sportsbook office and get more cash because they didn't have enough to pay people out.
That's crazy. And you know, you're the first guy I thought about. My wife and I were sitting there watching. I said, I wonder how much Mike put down on Holly because he always puts money. He always puts some money down on the underdog. I was like, I know he came up like the mob, and I text you, and you're like, I didn't get around to it. I was like, oh, come on, man.
I was gonna put $200 down. I would have made $800.
Wow.
But you know what? You know how many times I've put money down on Ronda's opponent and lost it?
Right. So well, 12 times?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I didn't have an incentive to drive to them. Like, I got to get there and place this bet. Like I have some inside knowledge or something.
Right.
I was like, if I get around to it, I'll do it. I didn't get around to it. I was like, who cares? She's probably going to lose anyway. No point in me losing. But man, well, let's talk to our guest in a second. Real quick, just some shout outs. People, our listeners that have been using that coupon code LLA to get 10% off the best nutrition supplements around. We got Joseph Viz, Christopher Kaufman, Stefan Fabian, Nicholas Button, Jeff Herman, Martin Fellows, James Davis, David McElroy, Maurice Burrows, Frank Welling, Corey Burks, Brian Watkins. So you need to join these folks and use that coupon code, get 10% off. You know, a lot of you guys out there have bitch tits and a gawk, man. You got serious estrogen dominance, and you're not doing jack shit about it. So what you need to do is, go buy a 5-pack of EC and start clean up your diet, your exercise regimen. Make 2016 the year that you
look like a man again.
Yeah, exactly. Now you're halfway to Caitlyn Jenner. I mean, a lot of guys out there are proof that you can get a sex change without surgery because they're fucking 75% of the way there.
Look, man, I make it easy for you guys because I put the link to the bundles in the show notes. I mean, so quit just horsing around and buying a bottle here, a bottle there. Get the bundles, man. Stop it. Just cut it out.
Charles, you're about to say, our guest couldn't help but jump in.
You got to join in.
It's a fact. There's a lot of studies that show that wheat is linked to depression. So maybe eating 37 years Wheaties made him want to cut his own balls off.
No, he's married to the Kardashians, man. That'll do it right there.
Yeah, we talked to our friend Dr. Julio Garcia last week, and we were talking. That came up. He's a plastic surgeon, and my theory was that he spent so much time around all those Kardashian women that the estrogen surge 24/7 permeated his body, and then all of a sudden he decided, you know what? If I can't beat them, I might as well join them. I mean, that's the first thing I thought of when I heard about this whole desire to transform. I was like, I doubt this happened when he was a kid. It probably happened within the last decade or so, doing that reality TV show. We all know reality TV increases estrogen. And he's actually in the show, so that compounds it further.
Yeah, definitely do that, man. Oh, man. So I tell you what, man, let's get to our guests. We can finish cleaning up house at the end, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been waiting for this re-record, for the last couple of weeks now. So
yeah,
let's
we
get
had some
to
issues. Our guest today is Charles Poliquin, best strength coach in the world, and we had him on the show last month, and Skype decided to upgrade the software right before we started recording
exactly.
with him. And it looked like everything was recording fine, and then at the end of the episode, or actually the next day, Sincere, you were looking at it, and it was nowhere to be found.
I wanted to punch my laptop in the face. You had no idea.
And it was such a good conversation, but we'll make sure that this is a great conversation as well. But Charles, it's really interesting because we're coming off an incredible UFC, a major upset, and you were talking about how your daughter's a big MMA fan, and she wants to be the next Ronda Rousey. Maybe she wants to be the next Holly Holm now. After this
actually, she's quite an impressive Holly.
Yeah.
You got to give it to Holly. She did study her opponent well. She beat her at her own game. I mean, in the sense that even when she tried to take her down, she couldn't. So she studied her very well, and her kicks are very good and punches. But in the first round, I mean, Ronda was really chasing her, but she was good to evade. I mean, defense is part of having a good offense. So.
Yeah. footwork was incredible. Her ability to move was really impressive.
Yeah, I think the one thing people,
Ronda too.
Yeah, the one thing I think people are leaving out is that Holly is a boxing champion and a kickboxing champion. So out of all the 12 opponents that Ronda's had, this one right here was actually a well-rounded athlete who was also a champion herself. These other girls, they're just competing in that division. Not taking anything away from them, but they weren't on that level that Ronda was on, as far as being an Olympian and, and being a champ for so long. These other girls were chasing after her. Whereas Holly's been there. She knows what it feels like. She knows what it takes to win a championship. And she's in a great camp as well. And to me, she had the size advantage and she had the strength advantage. You can see that when Ronda took her down trying to roll her up, you just saw Holly clinch and just lock down, and Ronda just looked confused, like she could not roll her up. This girl is hella strong, man.
Her physique looked great.
Yes.
She looked really, she always looks great, but she looked really in shape in the fight. She was full six-pack, lean, strong. When you listen to her talk in interviews pre-fight, something about her confidence was very believable.
Well, I think that's another thing you can give to Greg Jackson.
She wasn't like, I'm going to go in there and do this. She's just like, hey, I respect her and I believe in myself and my camp. And it just felt, everyone says that, right? And a lot of times we're like, that you have to say that. But somehow it felt authentic when she said it.
Well, that's just something about Winklejohn and Jackson, man. Just somebody, they really work on the mindset. Look what they did with John Jones, in the ring, in the octagon. He's just, what happens outside is a totally different story, but.
Well, John Jones looks like he's been training with you, Charles, the weights he's putting up.
Yeah.
He's deadlifting 600 pounds now.
Focus now.
It's like out of nowhere he got into powerlifting. And I'm not sure what, I'm not sure what they're trying to do with him. I don't know if he's trying to go up to heavyweight, or I'm not sure what the philosophy is behind putting him on a super heavy weight training regimen right now, because that can be counterproductive too for athletes if they don't make sure to do the mobility work and so forth. You don't want to tighten up. So what do you think about that, Charles? With MMA athletes, do you think that powerlifting has a place within it?
Yeah, as long as you don't. Powerlifting will increase the power of your shots and kicks and takedowns, but skill is skill, and then some people are very stupid and try to duplicate the skill with a resistance. You train muscles and then you relearn to use those stronger muscles into movement patterns, but I think it's quite beneficial. Probably not done enough, really.
Right.
The thing with MMA fighters is they're work addicts. They work really hard, but sometimes they could do a bit more smarter work. There's a point where you've mastered something, and then getting that punch 20% stronger will make a huge difference.
Yeah,
the difference between taking it and being knocked out by it.
Yeah, it seems like with a lot of MMA strength and conditioning programs, they tend to chase reps. Right, they're doing CrossFit type workouts. There doesn't seem to be any real design. They're just working out.
Yeah.
I think that's a mistake. And I think some of the MMA people, they're working on so many different skill sets, and then they throw in several of those workouts per week. You have to wonder what the advantage is there, because now you're just dissipating energy.
Yeah, very true.
Now, what's interesting about some of the things, last time we spoke, you talked about how when you're working with athletes, you look at what their neurotransmitter dominance may be, whether they're dopamine motivated or acetylcholine. Let's get into that a little bit more. How do you distinguish the two, and then how would you design programs around those parameters?
Well, what I do is I use a Braverman test, which is a written test. So far, no one in physiology has been able to do a neurotransmitter dominance test or neurotransmitter deficiency test using saliva, urine, or blood. I know a lot of labs that used to send me free testing kits, and it didn't turn out to be good. And Dr. Galaka and Dr. Wilner, who probably are the functional medicine practitioners who've studied neurotransmitters the most, agreed that the Braverman test was still the cat's ass when you're looking at their dominance. So there are four major neurotransmitters, and in the weight world, you see either acetylcholine, dopamine, or what I call earth type in Chinese medicine, so they have no real dominance. So when you plot their score on a curve, it looks more like a circle.
Right.
So back in the 70s, Pluckfelder, who was a coach for Rigert and Alexeyev, pointed out that there's three types of athletes: volume respondent, variation respondent, or intensity respondent. So I espoused that concept very early on. For example, I had two girls in speed skating. We're both world champions 6 years in a row each. And then if you looked at the program design, you would have thought, oh man, he's got an epiphany, he changed his program after the first girl. Well, the thing is that when I started to train the second girl, I realized that the first girl's program didn't work at all. So I had to adapt to more of a volume-based program. So it wasn't an epiphany. It was more like I just adapted it to whoever I was coaching.
Right.
So I've been doing that for a long time, but it took till the late 90s before I figured out that you could actually test for it with simply using a Braverman test. So once I figured that one out, I started to apply that. And then I found out there was a high correlation between what I observed in the gym and what the Braverman tested. Maybe it was the early 2000s, but anyway, it's in the seminar I took with Wilner and Bellica that I became familiar with the testing, and then I started to apply it. So it was kind of a shortcut, and then I realized also there's no such thing as very rare to fire a pure dopamine or pure acetylcholine.
Right.
I mean, it could be in between the two. So last week in Toronto, I showed like the extremes, and then I showed how you take care of between the two. But in essence, if someone is Earth type, which means they have no real dominance, they are volume responders. If they're acetylcholine dominant, they need a lot of variation in their training. And if they're dopamine regulated, then you need to play with intensity. In other words, those guys train balls to the walls all the time, but you change their program every workout.
Well, it makes sense, right? Because acetylcholine people learn things quickly, they recall information quickly, so they tend that it makes sense that they want more variety, so they're going to get bored faster. And then the dopamine people are going to be people that are chasing a reward pathway more.
Correct. So, it's exactly it. You understand? And the people who are volume based can resist boredom. That's why usually they're married, But swimming coaches. But
so if I like to sleep with a lot of women, that just reinforces my whole dopamine dominance. Yes. Okay. Okay. That's explained now. I've been wondering about that for a while.
Doesn't make you a bad person.
That's my excuse from now. I was like, look, I was born dopamine dominant. What do you want me to do?
Right.
Can't go against my nature, right? Go find an acetylcholine guy. No, but so I mean, would someone who is more dopamine emphasis, would that be lower volume, higher intensity, somewhere in the like a high intensity type protocol?
No, it just depends on how you define intensity. I define it by the weight on the barbell. So
right.
Because you could have a Rocky type of intensity, but
yeah, exactly. It's like heavier weights, lower repetitions, that kind of thing.
Basically less than 8 reps.
Okay.
Tend to do very few exercises. But for example, if they're training for, let's say Adam Nelson was the epitome of dopamine types. He's the most metal man in the history of the world in shot put. Well, he needed to have very, very high intensity. And then the best way not to get overtrained is just to change the workout. But every workout is got to be balls to the wall. So let's say workout 1, he does sets of 8 on, let's say, an incline press. Then the next workout could be sets of 7 using a flat dumbbell press.
Right,
and then you change the tempo, and so on. So, and then what you do is you do 8 workouts in a row where you change every workout. Then you start workout 9 would be workout 1 again, but with more weight. Okay. So that's how I train those guys. And then the acetylcholine type, I just play with volume because they have a hard time recovering from volume. And the max I'll ever put them on a workout is 6 workouts, but there's always weekly drops in volume. I had a girl who was recovering from cancer, so one workout was 100% of sets, second workout was 80% of sets, workout 3 was only 25% of sets. And while she was recovering from cancer, a year later, she had the longest throw in the world in shot put. So I got her strong despite the fact she was on chemo. So, but the thing is that we don't train computers, we train humans. So you have to, the thing is that there's optimal volume and there's reality. So sometimes you could go balls to the walls, 10 sets of 1 to 3 reps. Next workout, you are stronger, but your work capacity is gone. So maybe you only do 4 sets that day. But with a dopamine person, instead of getting a bad workout, I just change the exercise. So they never have bad workouts. But every set they'll put in through, as far as work sets, will be truly hard work.
Yeah. Because someone who's so dopamine dominant, if they have a bad workout, that's going to be really demoralizing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they'll go postal. I mean, so
that'll ruin their whole day, right? Like you hear people talk about that. It's like, oh man, I was so excited to work out today, and I missed my numbers. Like my whole day is ruined.
That's right. So a good coach sets you up for success. So I have a girl, for example, who in wrestling came in one day and she was supposed to do power clean, but she told me my back hurts. So I said, okay, today's forearms. So we did an hour of forearms, no power clean. I said, come back tomorrow. And I treated her back, soft tissue work. And then she came back the next day, we had power clean, and she did a PB.
Yeah.
If I had stuck to the program, she would have been probably 5-7%, even 1% weaker is discouraging for people.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I'd rather wait an extra day. I mean, it's not going to make a difference when you're a year and a half at that time forward to the Rio Olympics. But so it's a good coach lives in the moment.
Yeah. Well, I think that's good for trainees. I think that's a good take-home message for trainees because sometimes I'll work out with a plan, and then as you're doing your warm-up sets on the deadlift, you realize, you know what, it's not going to be there today.
Yeah, today is not.
Or if it is there, it's going to be a lot harder than it should be, and that can be discouraging too. Like if I'm used to deadlifting 500 for 5 easily, and then all of a sudden 3 is difficult, and maybe I can get 2 more, but it's harder than it should be, that's discouraging as well. So sometimes when that happens to me, I'll stop right there and just do something completely different, like you said, and then come back, restore it, come back.
Was at the most, what do you call that? The most world records in the bench press, right?
Mm-hmm.
He has had world records 75, 82, 90, and 100 kilo weight class in the bench press. So, you can't argue with that. He would go to the bench and to the room and bench press a broomstick.
Huh.
And then he would decide if he came back or not. So people would come to this guy, back up, and then he would take a broomstick, bench it 3 times, just leave. The next day he was doing 95% of the world records. So the point is that he knew his body very well, and just by the broomstick, that takes a lot of self-confidence, though, to be able to say, okay, And I don't think it's laziness. It's just like what I call good kinesthetic intelligence.
Right, absolutely. I think some people make the mistake of pushing hard no matter what, right? Mm-hmm. So, sometimes they probably shouldn't even go to a workout. Like you had a crappy night of sleep, you wake up really fatigued, and you're like, screw it. Let me down a few cups of coffee. I'll get in there. Just suck it up.
Drink the pre-workout and like, okay, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they're marketed to that way though. It's everything they see is everybody's going balls to the wall, even though it's only a 10 or 15 second clip. Yeah, they went balls to the wall 15 seconds while they videoed that or whatever. But they were probably like, damn, 3 takes already? Come on, dude. When are we gonna finish this commercial?
Those are prop weights too.
Exactly.
It's easy to squat 8 plates when each one weighs 5 pounds.
Yeah, that's right.
I did a photo shoot for Iron Man magazine years ago, I think like 2003, and I forget the photographer's name, but I think he still does a lot of the photos for Iron Man magazine, and he was just giving me a tour of the studio, and then he's like, pick up that plate over there, and it was a 45-pound plate, and I think it weighed 5 pounds, and I was laughing because I didn't realize, I was just being, it's naive to not realize, but I didn't realize those were prop weights in all the photo shoots, before this, and then it obviously made sense because when you look at a lot of the photos, there'll be a guy squatting 8 plates and the bar's not even bending,
exactly.
His face is not even red,
He's smiling for the camera. I'm like, why are you smiling? What the hell, man?
But I think a lot of young people who are getting into working out just have these ridiculous expectations based on misinformation because they're looking at these magazines and these photos and they're going, oh, I guess I should be that strong. And then people just lie in those articles too. I remember there was an interview with LL Cool J at one time, and he's like, yeah, I like to do seated dumbbell presses with 120-pound dumbbells, each side for sets of 8, like 5 sets of 8. I was like, please, man.
Well, honestly, a lot of times they're not even saying that. It's just like whatever supplement company or whoever's sponsoring that ad or that interview or whatever. Because you always wait to the end of that interview and ask, like, okay, so what do you supplement with? And then all of a sudden you have this list of stuff. It's like, oh, this, and this. And you're like, wait a minute,
it's all on the next page.
Exactly. Like he doesn't use that. And then all of a sudden they have a sample workout with that supplement, following the page. So.
The worst was Mario Von Peebles for that movie Solo, which is a really crappy movie. Oh,
God. You actually remember that?
I remember it because I remember the alleged interview in Muscle and Fitness where they asked him about his training regimen, and it was like, 315 on the bench press for 5 sets of 10.
Okay. Okay, posse.
And I've never met him, but I've seen him in person before in Santa Monica when I used to live out there. He couldn't bench press 315 once to save his life. Okay.
At Gold's Gym, and Pete Gronkowski was there, and he was doing in his hands 3 45-pound plates, like stacked together.
Yeah.
And he was doing lateral raises. and then he starts laughing, and he said, "Here," and I grabbed them. They weighed maybe 5 pounds. They were plastic.
Right. Plastic.
And then he goes, "Go look at all the Muscle and Fitness articles, and you will see those 3 plates because they're joined together. They look like they're really tied in against the plate."
Yeah.
And the next day, there's an article by Tim Belknap, and he's deadlifting, 8 plates aside, but 3 of those plates were fake. Each side. So that's funny.
Yeah, I'm gonna get some of those prop weights. Deadlift 700 for sets of 10. Be like, man, this my supplement regimen's really working now.
But the different ways to bend on the bar.
Yeah. You have to put enough real weight on it so there's some bend, right? I think you have to be, if you're going to lie, you just can't lie too aggressively. So you have, instead of having like 5 real plates, right, and then 1 fake plate on each side, it's like you can't bend the lie too far. You got to watch a couple episodes of American Greed and be more slick about it.
Yeah.
Now, one thing we were talking about last time where you were on is we were talking about how a lot of things about testosterone are just not understood, right? Like a lot of people have always said that sex hormone binding globulin is the bad guy and you need to lower that as much as possible. But now we're finding out that sex hormone binding globulin actually attaches itself to testosterone to transport it to other areas for utilization. So it seems that this overfixation on testosterone as a measure of how anabolic you are is somewhat misplaced. Mm-hmm. And you were talking about how DHEA is actually something you want to look at a little bit more. Can we get into that a little bit?
Yeah, you should measure salivary DHEA sulfate.
Okay.
Its ratio to cortisol. And the best way to do it is to measure it actually 4 times a day.
Now, why saliva versus blood testing?
Because saliva is more of a measure of adrenal output. Okay. And when you have DHEA sulfate is the mother of androgens. So the problem with testosterone in the blood is it's so transient that the only way you can actually measure it accurately is every 20 minutes for 2 hours. So no one's going to volunteer.
Yeah, right.
Stay in the chair for that long. So what an Austrian doctor determined a few years ago is that if you measure someone's DHEA sulfate and salivary cortisol 4 times a day, you do really have a much greater and more precise, a much precise view of your anabolic status.
Right.
And the big advantage is that if you look at this research from Slovakia that shows that not everybody makes androgens at the same time. So, they used to say if you don't wake up under a teepee, you're not a real male because you're not making testosterone. Well, it seems that some of the guys make their testosterone or all the androgens more around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So they've done studies where people train at their optimal time, so early morning or late afternoon. Yeah. And they did groups where they did the reverse. They train at non-optimal times. And surprise, surprise, people make more gains if they train at their optimal androgen time. And they make less gains so if you're a 9 o'clock person and you train at 5, you're going to be as badly catabolic as a guy that's anabolic at 5 that trains at 9 in the morning.
Oh, that's real. That's really interesting. Talk about precision, right? So if you understand your anabolic curve, you know whether you should work out in the morning or later in the afternoon or even evening.
Correct. So that's interesting stuff. But if you look at the ratios, you could tell we had some norms we developed with the Canadian athletes back in the late 80s, and the norms were 7-21. So 7 was basically Woody Allen or Obama, okay? Yeah. And 21 was Conan the Barbarian. And then you looked at, we had one guy on the team that was actually 29. So, but he was, when he got out of the jail the first time, he gained a pound a day for 14 days. That shows a guy that's quite anabolic. It was probably his cortisol dropped because he wasn't in jail, and then, his DHEA took over. But throughout our career, we found, for example, that guys would try out for the bobsleigh team, and the only guys who made the team were guys who had ratios of 19 and above. Okay? So the point being is that how much you make in the androgens is kind of pointless unless you know what's the other side of the coin, which is the catabolic side, right?
Yeah. So
you could be really anabolic, but if you also have catabolic, it kind of negates it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's also interesting is that the difference in outcome with saliva versus blood test. I mean, I've done DHEA saliva tests where I was just super high first thing in the morning, and then I've done blood tests on DHEA where I'm just in the middle.
Yeah.
So it seems that for adrenal hormones, it makes more sense to do saliva testing. Does it make more sense, period, though, even for measuring testosterone?
Yeah, but the point is, Mike, is that your adrenal status is an indication of your overall stress.
Right.
So I don't really give a rat's ass about any blood values.
Okay.
If your adrenals are not healthy, they call it the 3F principle. So we used to say flight or fight.
Yeah.
But it's actually fuck, flight, or fight. DHEA sulfate is an indication of also your sex drive.
Right,
and then if you don't, let's say if you're the alpha gorilla and you beat the crap of all the other gorillas in your herd, you're the only one that's fucking the females. So your DHEA sulfate will be high. Yeah. Meaning that if you're the alpha male, you don't have to fight anymore, so your stress levels are quite low. If you're the alpha male, you're not getting laid and you get beat up, so your cortisol is low. So one of the best ways, I think, to understand all this is actually Robert Sapolsky's book, A Private's Memoir. He explains all that very well with baboons, and it's a very hilarious book.
I was just about to bring that up. I read that book, and I saw a National Geographic special on that, right? It was the baboons in Africa that they did studies on. And I think it was all the alpha males who had the highest levels were just bullies to the rest of them, and then they ate some tainted meat and died. And then all of a sudden, all of the oppressed baboons were much happier. It's like they had way less stress. Their blood pressure was better. Their stress levels were lower. Their cortisol was lower. And then,
there's studies done on successful businessmen versus unsuccessful businessmen.
Right.
And when a guy gets a big check, from some deal, his testosterone goes up.
Yeah.
Or even hockey fans, they've shown that if you're at Madison Square Garden and your team won, you came out, your testosterone is high, and the losers have lower testosterone. So success. That's why it's also so important to plan for success in your training, because that's going to put you more anabolic, right?
No, it's true. It's like if you're successful in your personal life, you're going to get better workouts, and vice versa as well.
Exactly.
That's something I try to emphasize so much. We talk about, that's one of the themes on the show that's reoccurring, is that if you're some guy who's got some job you hate, and you got some real bitch for a wife or girlfriend, and you're just this pinball in life, and then you try to make up for it by putting in some hard workouts, you're really missing the whole ball here, man. You're really missing the whole purpose. Because my workouts have never been better. I mean, my workouts got so much better when I got laid off from a job I hated. I got into a business that I was really passionate about and got my personal life together. It's like everything improved altogether.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's something that people want to – I think that's a take-home message I really want people to take heed of, is that if you want to improve your training results, improve your personal life, and then use your training results as a motivator to improve your personal life. I mean, if you can take charge of your fitness, then what else can you take charge of?
Exactly. Otherwise, it's going to become a drug. It's going to be like anyone that's addicted to drugs. You get high, but when you come off that high, you got to deal with life again. So what do? You go get high again. So that's why you have these people that can't get out of the gym. It's like, oh, I have to go to the gym. Yeah, because you got to go home and deal with that nagging wife of yours. I'd stay in the gym too. Hopefully you run into a good divorce lawyer while you're there, man. Like, come on.
I remember I've talked to people before. It goes, man, if it wasn't for my training regimen, I wouldn't be able to get through my day.
That sucks.
I was like, well, you need to quit working out and have your day. The best advice I can give you is to stop working out so that you have more energy to take charge of your life. Now, with cortisol, Charles, I remember back in the day where all these cortisol blocker supplements were coming out, and they would say, take it an hour before you work out. It was the worst advice ever, wasn't it? Because I remember I took 800 milligrams of phosphatidylserine before training, and anytime I did that, it was a terrible workout. And then then I remember reading your information. You go, take it after you work out, to lower excess cortisol. You don't take it before you work out. You need cortisol for good workouts.
Well, actually, there's very good research out of Scandinavia that shows that cortisol is your best friend while you train. So what they've shown is the guys who can produce the most cortisol during workouts are the guys who actually have the greatest long-term gains. Conversely, the ones who could lower cortisol past the workout as well are the ones that make also much better gains. So the key is have a lot of cortisol while you train and then block it off once you're done. Once the message is sent, it's like ringing a doorbell. Ringing it 10 times doesn't make a difference, right?
Right.
Right.
The cortisol, but then the only way to get the message across is to open the door and receive the packages, and that's when you want to drop your cortisol.
Seems that if you finish your workout at the optimal time, your cortisol should start dissipating anyway, right? Because you just utilized it, you worked it out. Just like a lot of people like to use training as somewhat of an antidepressant or as a stress relief. Because you always feel better after working out, right? Like yesterday, I was doing a lot of business stuff, and I didn't have anxiety, but I was just kind of in this amped up state. So then I just did 15 all-out sprints, felt great afterwards, just worked out all that nervous energy.
Yeah, there's such a thing as burning cortisol. So that's why they find that during economic crises, business leaders tend to work out more. So one thing I know, I don't have scientific studies, but I got plenty of in the trenches evidence, is that anytime there's been an economic crisis, the most skilled personal trainers or strength coaches make more money. What happens is that the business leaders, the guys who have money, say, screw that, the market's terrible, blah, 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 it's not time to do a good deal. I'm going to start concentrating myself. And it is actually the average gyms that take the greatest beating. So, so I've had a lot of students, when it's Christ, we're going through it.
So 24-hour fitness takes a big hit.
Yeah, I can admit during that time, let's just say when the so-called, I had to say so-called because if you really didn't feel it here in Houston in 2008, 2009, I didn't even realize there was a financial crisis going on that year. And I
don't think there was in Texas.
Yeah, exactly. And I can show the books because actually at that point, because I had just started my business probably about 5 years before that, that was the time when things really started picking up for me. And I'm talking like my classes were packed. So I was sitting there thinking like, okay, obviously people here weren't taking the economic hit because I had a lot of people signing up and for training at that time. So that year was very oblivious to me when people even talk about it now, like, oh, the financial hit of 2008, 2009. I'm like, okay, where was I? Because I didn't take that hit. But so now I can attest to what Charles is saying. It just seemed like even more people were training at that time.
Well, I think economic hit is relative too, right? Like Americans get an economic hit. For most Americans, it means that you have to prioritize your expenditures.
Right.
Right. It doesn't mean you're living on the streets or that you haven't eaten in a week.
Or you're in a soup kitchen or something like that,
Yeah, you take an economic hit in Rwanda. That means you went from your one bowl of ugali per day to once a month now.
Right. Right.
All of a sudden, that well that's a mile away is gone. Now you have to walk 4 miles to get fresh water.
Right.
So it's really all relative. I think anytime there's an economic retraction, it gets smart people at least to prioritize.
Right.
And be like, okay, what can I cut out that what are all the non-essentials, all the stuff that I'm just wasting money and time on.
Right.
And then like Charles said, how do you work on yourself now? So I think a fitness business is actually a good business to be in, regardless of whether the economy is great or not, because fitness is one of the things people like smart people anyway, start prioritizing their health. And I also think that really successful people, especially, I think things are changing now where you have really successful businessmen and women who do work out hard, but that's a new behavior, right? Like my grandfather's age, nobody worked out then. He was a very successful businessman. He wasn't a physical fitness guy, and most of his peers weren't either. So what happens though is that the generation after his, let's say my father's, these people worked out. I mean, these people worked really hard. Their physical fitness went down the drain. And now they're lining up at anti-aging offices and so forth because they have the money to spend to try to get their health back.
And they're living longer, so they have to do a little bit more maintenance now, the way things are going now, compared to the generation before them and the one before that. So.
Right. So now maybe investment bankers are taking testosterone shots instead of snorting cocaine. All some strippers at Morgan Stanley. Now, one thing I'm curious about, Charles, and I'm pretty sure I know what your response will be, is, but how bad is alcohol for anabolism, for health in general?
Well, one of the things that has to do with genetics, some people are better alcohol responders than others.
Yeah.
The thing is that there's a difference between moderation and, of course, abuse.
Yeah.
But not every genotype can tolerate even alcohol in small quantities, okay? So I think it's something people should experiment with. Alcohol in moderation being 1 to 2 glasses of wine a day. And in some subjects, it actually increases their testosterone because it drops their cortisol.
I heard with women, testosterone tends to go up with alcohol consumption, and that with men, estrogen tends to go up, which probably explains why guys start telling each other how much they love each other. And,
over beer and
crying. You're always there for me, man.
No, but the thing is that it also depends on the type of alcohol. I mean, beer is estrogenic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Vodka? Wine is not. So, I mean, that could be but, for example, getting smashed with alcohol tends to suppress testosterone for 5 days.
Yeah, I believe
so.
Yeah.
So there's guys, I mean, that was shown in peer-reviewed studies. Most of the research has been done in Finland because they've got an alcoholism problem. Yeah. But what they found is that getting smashed on a Friday night suppressed testosterone to basically castrated levels for 5 days. So guys get jacked in the gym, they want to get all pumped up for Friday night, and then they get drunk. Well, they wasted all their efforts.
Yeah. Well, what about marijuana?
Marijuana is far more severe.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, marijuana is like the studies I've seen. One joint is 24 hours. A week of smoking a joint a day suppresses testosterone for a month. A month suppresses it for 6 months. So it seems like it actually compounds. So 1-to-1 ratio, then 1-to-4 ratio, then 1-to-6 ratio, depending on how long you've been on it. So I would say, if you want to be very good at recovering, marijuana is a no-no for sure. Plus, it's estrogenic,
Right. So if you go on Joe Rogan's podcast, Charles, make sure to request that he smoke a joint after you leave, not while you're in the studio.
And on top of that, here to Dana White in Nevada, in the coalition, whatever, Nick Diaz is not a threat. Okay, it's not a performance enhancer. Come on,
we should
people.
Be more impressed.
Exactly.
That means Nick was fighting with high estrogen levels, and he was high.
Very impressive.
He was still winning fights, man. We should be even more impressed now. Now, what about selective androgen receptor modulators? Have you looked into those at all? SARMs? Have you done any research?
I've not done any research on it because at the time the raw material was prohibitive.
Yeah, they still are. They're all on the WADA list. Yeah.
And the other thing is that there's been, how do you know you're really getting a SARM? I mean, there's a famous case in the media about a kid that was on so-called SARM, and he tested for metabolites of testosterone. So obviously he wasn't injecting a SARM. So it's something I wouldn't screw with because the odds of having a positive control is too high.
Right.
I mean, the potential is good. I mean, there's a lot of products on the market. They're not SARMs, but they use those specific modulators, kinase, for example, for the treatment of diabetes or osteoporosis. But those are made by medical type of supplements, like metagenics.
Yeah.
And I've seen very good results on restoring cartilage and stuff, but they have not put to market the SARM for muscle mass.
Yeah. I mean, they're kind of a gray area classification right now. So it's like, as you said, it's hard to find a legitimate source because they're not really the companies that are selling it aren't necessarily. I mean, supplements in general are not necessarily subject to any regulation, but let's say you want to have a supplement made and you use an FDA approved lab, it's going to go through a certificate of analysis. There's going to be some procedures there to determine that what you say is in the label is actually in the label. But those kind of places won't touch SARMs because they're not classified as nutrition supplements right now. So basically, if you wanted to sell SARMs, you would have to hire a couple guys to put the caps together in your garage or something along those lines. And maybe if you're a legit person, it's going to be a legit product. But for the consumer, it's a bit of a betting game. Maybe you're getting it, maybe you're not.
Yeah, because I had a female student from Poland send me pre and post pictures of herself.
Yeah.
On the SARM. I was like, well, if it's a SARM, that's pretty impressive, but I don't think it's a SARM. You can see she had virilization issues in the face. So,
it wasn't a SARM then because SARMs don't work that way. I've played around with Osterin and Carterin and I do like both. And so SARMs1.com is, I mean, I'm taking the chance here that this is legitimate. For all I know, just based on what you said, Charles, for all I know, I just took liquid testosterone, but I didn't feel that. I didn't feel like any big increase in testosterone or any side effects that you would get with any kind of HRT, TRT. But the Carterin I found is very good for increasing endurance. That was highly noticeable. I mean, it was undeniable. Like with just the ability to sprint harder and recover in between sets was undeniable. And also the ability where less carbohydrates were being stored as body fat. I was eating more carbohydrates, but I was getting leaner. More the carbohydrates were going to muscles, the theory with Carterin. The Osterin I tried for a little while because I've had some issues with my left arm, some osteoarthritis there. And I did find it alleviated to some extent. And an increase in strength was noticeable and an increase in size as well. So I think there's something to SARMs. I think they're an interesting category. It's something I'm going to keep tabs on. I was just curious. I figured with someone like you can't have your athletes use it for obvious reasons. They're WADA banned substances.
Yeah, plus, I mean, even if they were not WADA banned, the problem is like, who's going to test if they're real? So I don't
That's the other thing, exactly. You would have to test it personally, and that's a very expensive process, for an individual to do. So that is just not worth the trouble.
No.
Now, what about recovery methods? Have you tried things such as cryotherapy with your athletes?
I think it slows down recovery.
Okay.
I find it counterproductive. I think the things that work best is gua sha, the Chinese tool for soft tissue.
Okay.
Acupuncture, if the practitioner is good, he'll know how to use the yin points to calm you down. The Rolfing is pretty good. ART is pretty good. I mean, the problem with all these things is that the limiting factor in most cases is actually the body repairs itself too well. So there's too much scar tissue in the muscle to allow it for growth. So I find that if you can find a good soft tissue practitioner, it'll make a huge difference. For example, in Rolfing, let's say if you've done years of martial arts or wrestling, your neck will be all bound up with a lot of scar tissue, which reduces the intervertebral space. So you see a good Rolfer, and they basically, quote unquote, lengthen your neck, the structures that control your neck, and suddenly all your upper body lifts have gone up. So, but as far as recovery, I think the key is to suppress cortisol right after workouts. There's a lot of ways you could do that. But another thing that people don't really look at is feeding the brain properly.
Yeah.
Once you feed the brain properly, then you could lift heavier weights. Therefore, you could activate better, so you could produce more cortisol. And then probably the most neglected factor is actually adrenal health.
Right.
So like I said, it's a fight, fuck, or flight thing. So if you have healthy adrenals, you're not flying, you're not fighting, so you're more in a fucking mood, as I would say, which is more anabolic.
Right. Absolutely. Now, with feeding the brain, you're talking about nourishing the major neurotransmitters, eating in a way where each one is nourished, GABA, serotonin, acetylcholine, dopamine.
Addressing your deficiency, because you could be dopamine dominant and, let's say, serotonin deficient. And because you're serotonin deficient, you don't sleep well. Because you don't sleep well, you don't recover. Because you don't recover, you don't have drive in your workouts, blah, 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 blah. So
someone who's serotonin deficient would taking something such as 5-HTP before bedtime or higher doses of magnesium.
Something like that. I mean, for example, but there's a huge biochemical in the duality. What I found is people tend to be dopamine dependent, actually counter-react to 5-HTP. They sleep like for 1 hour and then they wake up very aggressive. So I prefer to use straight tryptophan. For some reason, facilitating conversion doesn't work at certain genotypes. Some of my athletes think that 5-HTP is the best thing ever discovered, and I have some that hate it. So I only give them like a tablet to try out and ask them, tell me tomorrow if it worked or not. And you'll know within 1 day if it works for you or not. Like for me, if I wanted to go to a shopping mall and kill 75 people with my bare hands, I would take a nap with a 5-HTP before. And then I would come up.
But make sure you take notes on that one, folks.
Yeah. Well, the point is that it's all about biochemical individuality. For example, there's an anti-allergy pill called Gametap.
Yeah.
I have 7 siblings, and one day the college were discussing, and I said, you know what, the Gametap, I reacted. It makes me super aggressive. And my sister says, oh, I called the pill to slap people in the face. What do you mean? She goes, oh, if I want to slap people in the face for a living, that's what I would take. And one of my other brothers says, like, you too? Like, all 3 of us, obviously we're coming with the same genetic background, found that Gametap made us extremely irritable. So I don't know what's in it that, what the chemical structure is, but it's certainly, my favorite mass murderer pill,
Now, would that irritability be beneficial for a good workout, or would it be counterproductive?
So probably if I was embarrassed to carry a tablet in my jeans, so in case there's another ISIS attack, I'll take one of those pills so I can kill the guys with my bare hands. But I got a fact-acting one. But the thing is that I've known this a long time from Rowdy Pasquale. Our chemistry is as individual as our fingerprints. So, I think that's something that's neglected. Some stuff works, something doesn't. I mean, that's why you got to play with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everything. One thing that works extremely well for someone else, you think you're going to duplicate the same results, and it has the complete opposite. You don't know until you try different paradigms, or different protocols.
Like one day I went vegan, and the next day I wanted to vote for Hillary Clinton, so I knew there was something wrong with my brain. The point is that,
well, hey, at least you didn't try to vote for Bernie Sanders afterwards. Could have been worse.
Yeah, but the point is that I come from a native background, so being a vegan is not exactly my genes. So I've tried for about 2 years where I do a 1 day a week. I thought that was pretty good, but now with my training schedule, it's kind of impossible. But I think that. Dave Tate gave a good lecture on that, and John Meadows also kind of reinforced that thing. At the end of the day, it's what works for you.
Right. Well, I mean, results is always what speaks, right? So it's like someone will tell me like, oh, that diet doesn't work, and I've been doing a vegan diet for over 20 years, and I'm still getting stronger. So you can't thrive for 20 years.
No.
You can't do something for 20 years and sustain it, if you feel like crap the whole time. At least I can't. Some people feel like crap every day for their whole lives, so I guess you can.
Some people.
But you're not going to perform at it. You're not going to perform at a high level or improve.
Exactly.
Doing something that's not optimal for you.
Exactly. And then the thing is that, for example, one of my best hockey players lived on a diet of only 10% protein, 70% carbs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And actually, 10% fat, 20% protein, 70% carbs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But, out of the 66 I trained that year, he was the only one where he saw improvements on that. So when I did put him on a high protein diet, he went backwards. So I said, okay, let's do the opposite. So I went to high carbs. And I said, actually, the problem with you is fat. So we dropped his fats down. And he became the least injured player in the league. They call it the Ironman Trophy. And he used to have an history of injuries. So for him, that's what worked best.
Yeah.
I don't mess with the system. If you do the world average, the average carbohydrate intake in the world should be 40%.
Right.
But some people do well on 70, some people do well on 2%. So you can't take the average and say, well, everybody should be that.
Yeah, no doubt. I find I do well with at least 40% from fat in my diet. Anytime I do low fat, I feel terrible. I feel weak in the gym. Everything feels heavy. If I have optimal levels of fat, I feel great. Skin looks better. The workouts feel great. Everything feels strong all day.
There you go.
And some people, they won't do well with that much fat in the diet. So I think that's one thing that people hate to hear, because they want someone, especially someone like you, who's so well respected, to say, oh yeah, just do this.
Yeah, just validate what they're doing.
Not have to think about it.
I mean, I was explaining last weekend that even though if I know your dopamine or your acetylcholine or non-dominant, I always put all my athletes through basically an 8-week tolerance test.
Yeah.
And they get these different programs, and I see how much it takes to break them down. And then I know what their set-off point is. I don't tell them that before I give them the program, but I look at how the weights go up or down, and I say, okay, you need to change that often, because it's a fine-tuning, and also, there's a Buddhist saying, you don't step ever twice in the same river. So the river changes all the time. So
right.
So what was a great method 3 years ago probably won't do anything for you this year.
Right. That's definitely true.
Yeah, I was going to bring it up.
The way I trained when I was 25 is not going to work now. I mean, even the way I eat is different. That's constantly modifying things, constantly playing around with stuff. Well, what have you found that you've had to do with your own workouts, right? I think you're 54 now, Charles?
Yes.
So, I mean, let's say just looking at your own work, just the way you train yourself, what are some of the major things that have had to change since you were 35, let's say?
Well, when I was 35, I used to train twice a day. That's probably when I was biggest. I weighed 214 at 5'7".
Yeah, that's big.
Yeah, but now I weigh about 187, 192. But I can't recover from twice a day anymore.
Right.
So, and the thing is that
when it was twice a day, was it the same body parts twice a day, or you were doing
workouts, right?
Okay.
And so I trained at that time 3 to 4 days out of 5. And then it took me a while to get to that work capacity. It took me about 8 years to be able to do, all of that work. But the point is that I find now that I travel so much that my periodization is country based. So, as I said, I like to always have good workouts. So I have my Melbourne workouts, I got my Sydney workouts, I got my Tallinn workouts, and they're all on my computer. And then when I visit Tallinn 6 months from now, I'll try to do the Tallinn workout with more weight.
Yeah.
And because I think that.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I periodize it that way. It's not very scientific, but the point is that I'm happy training, And then the thing is that when you're younger, like you get this fit. I'm benching, but I think I'm 5 pounds less because it's not the same bench. Fuck that. It's the same bench than it was last 6 months. So I just compare those weights with those weights. So that's that. And then. Yeah, the good thing is I have a lot of students all over the world who have great gyms. They got the fat dumbbells from Watson, they got Alico bars, plates, Atlantis, whatever. So it's easier and easier for me to have a good workout. It's rare that I go to a city where it's hard for me to find a gym. The best way to find a good gym is you ask local street cop, where do the criminals train? People train. Seriously, I was in Denmark and I said, where do the criminals train? And the guy said, like the Hells Angels? I said, yes. He goes, it's this gym. So I went there, and it was the best gym for so far that I've seen in Copenhagen, right? So if I'm in Sweden, I go, okay, where are the criminals going? So I go to this gym. And I went there last time I was in Stockholm. It was the best gym I saw in Sweden. I mean, it was really old equipment, which I don't mind, but it was like a very good hardcore gym. And you go to Montreal, there's a gym every 3 doors. So the gym market is very competitive in Montreal, but then again, you go where the criminals train.
Yeah.
It's the best gym. I mean, if you're looking for a public gym, obviously my students don't tend to cater to the criminals that much. But if you, let's say, go to Moscow and you leave your gym, just ask a local cop.
I think every gym there will be where criminals train.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
I think the Russian mafia is the largest employer.
Yeah, I just don't really see a big market for 24-hour fitness over in Moscow. And all the selfie stations that Charles talked about last time.
That is like Russian mafia is the number 1 employer, and then network marketing companies are number 2 and 3, which is also somewhat of a criminal organization. So that makes sense.
I went to a gym in London, which shall remain nameless, but I was there with one of my employees, and the first question they asked us is if we were cops. And I handed out the guy.
Well, it wasn't Spartan Gym, was it?
I went in there, and then, so I gave the employee a lifetime membership that the owner gave me.
Yeah.
And then he let me in, but it's kind of funny because you could tell it was something out of the Josh Bryan book, like Jailhouse Strong. Like, you could tell all these. But you know what? I prefer to train in a gym like that than a gym where they have actually official selfie stations. You know?
No doubt.
The thing that's good about these gyms, no one takes a selfie in case it takes a picture in the background of somebody that's unpromoted.
That's incriminating.
Yeah, you're gonna get your butt kicked in there. You try to take a selfie.
That's right.
It's like, hey, I don't want anyone to know I'm in here. I got 5 warrants out for me right now. You know?
Exactly. You know what? I've been to a lot of them, and I've never had any problem. I find that those gyms, people are far more polite. They put their stuff away, you know.
Well, you don't have anyone in there that has anything to prove necessarily, right? Like I think on Joe Rogan's latest podcast, he and Dana White were talking. I think it was Rogan's podcast, but they were basically saying the safest place to be is with a room full of fighters because they don't have anything to prove to each other.
That's right. But I remember training this gym in Montreal, and I was the only guy without a criminal record, and I used to get teased about it every day.
It's like, when you going to commit a crime, Charles?
Yeah. That's probably the only guy who could read too, but anyway.
Yeah, that's not going to get you any brownie points in the can, I don't think. It's like, well, I have a PhD in philosophy. Really? Okay. We'll be at your cell a little later today.
Yeah, sure.
You can read me a bedtime story later, sweetie.
Yeah. Here's something interesting. Your training programs are so effective. Is it possible to work with an athlete where you get them too big too soon, where it actually takes away from their athleticism now, meaning that they just put on muscle too fast, where it just changed their body mechanics?
Nothing that can't be fixed in 3 weeks.
Okay. So that's not really a problem to worry about. That's something.
No.
How would you fix that? You just do more mobility work, or what would you do with someone in that case?
What happens is that freaks will freak you out in the first few weeks.
Yeah.
You know? So I had a guy, for example, who drank a case of beer a day, right? And he was very, very muscular. And then I gave him 3 grams of tyrosine, 3 grams of D-alpha-lanolin on an empty stomach, which basically cuts their cravings from alcohol. They actually find alcohol distasteful. And I told him it was for his thyroid. And he's the guy I've seen grow the fastest. I think he put something like 25 pounds of muscle in 28 days.
Wow.
But the thing is that it isn't because the program is magical. It's the guy was highly anabolic, despite he was drinking 24 beers a day. You remove all that alcohol from his body. I mean, he's an outlier. In my career, he's the only guy. You know, of course, people will misquote me on that. I didn't do it every day of the week in my life. It's the only guy I could think of. But I was talking to a NCAA coach who had a basketball player, and he tested positive on marijuana too often. So the coach said to him, and he came from a criminal environment, and the coach said to him, you have two choices. I kick you and you can go play for another team, or I'll put you in drug rehab. And his mom was a crack addict, blah, blah, blah. So the guy, to his credit, said, I'm going to go in rehab. So the strength coach did a body comp on him, and he said, okay, well, he's going to atrophy. So all this guy could do was eat and sleep. So he went cold turkey, went to drug rehab, blah, blah, blah. And when he came out, he was 18 pounds of muscles bigger. And he didn't do any exercise. But the fact that he ate 3 times a day and did not suppress his testosterone made him grow that much.
Yeah.
And then he had an epiphany when he came out, and now he's probably going to go out in the draft, probably in the first round. Okay?
Wow.
So the point is that changing someone's lifestyle can make them anabolic. I mean, in that case of a hockey player, I'm not going to take credit for that 25 pounds of muscle from my training. It's from getting him to stop drinking alcohol.
That's what makes me think of someone like John Jones, how scary he's going to be when he comes back, because he was dominating the highest level of competition, and he was doing cocaine, and he was drinking, and he was partying, he was doing everything wrong in his personal life. And now it looks like he's cleaned up his act. And let's say he sustains this moving forward. He's on an intense training regimen. He's really working on his strength and conditioning. He looks like he has some serious ferocity to get back into the cage. Yeah. It's going to be amazing to see what he does now.
Correct.
I mean, I can't wait to see him fight like Daniel Cormier. I can't wait.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
I mean, like, if Daniel's smart, he's going to try to delay that fight for as long as possible.
He's going to do an Aldo, man. It's like, okay, I bruised my rib, man. I can't do this fight right now. I need another 6 months.
I mean, already he's like, yeah, I don't want to fight him until next year because I had a couple of tough fights, which he did. You know, the one with Gustafsson was tough.
Yeah.
But I think in the back of his mind, he's like, once that fight happens, I'm going to lose. And then there goes my light heavyweight championship. Now, speaking of UFC fighters, I know you did a little bit of work with George St Pierre recently, right? You were I forget the context. Were you going through a workout with him, or you were working with your mentor and him at the same time?
No, what happened is that my striking coach is a striking coach. So I was in the same gym, and then he knew what I was, and we started to chat, and then he's a workout fanatic.
Yeah.
So he said, what about this? What about that? So I just showed him a few things. And he was kind enough to post those on his site, you know. And then he's a very interesting guy to talk to. He's very
cerebral, yeah.
He's very kinesthetic. I mean, you know, I showed him a few things. And, for example, I showed him how to train for a one-arm chin. And recently he sent me a video, and he's getting pretty close.
Wow.
And from what I saw from the start, you know, he's a guy that's very dedicated to his condition. Obviously, now he's making money with his movies and stuff.
Right.
So why fight if he can at low risk make that much money doing Captain America, you know?
I think he's testing. Like, he's going to do a test training camp to see whether he wants to fight again, is what he's doing right now. So he's going to put himself through 6 weeks as if he had an opponent to test the waters. So I think that's interesting. I mean, personally, I'm not some expert on this whole thing, but I would like to see him not fight again, because I feel like he left on top. You know, he barely got that win against Johnny Hendricks. He still looks good. He's still a young guy, good-looking guy, very charismatic. So he's very marketable, right? So he can take all those skill sets somewhere else and sustain that for a long period of time, as opposed to come back in and maybe get his clock cleaned.
Right.
Maybe get his clock cleaned a few times and then finally realize, forget it, you know, I'm done. Because it was always depressing to see someone like a Chuck Liddell who just stuck around a little bit too long, where he got knocked out 4 times in a row. And then finally, like, Dana White had to retire. I was like, okay, that's it. You got knocked out by Rich Franklin, who doesn't knock out anybody. He just touched your chin and you were
Exactly.
out. It's like, no more, man.
People don't realize how demanding those fights are. I mean, the amount of stress, the amount of pressure, blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
so,
no doubt.
But, I can't blame the guy for wanting to do it once more. But
sure.
also, I wouldn't blame him for saying no thank you either. So, yeah.
But was there anything that just really impressed you about him, like his physical abilities, like something you showed him maybe, and you're like, man, he just picked that up fast, or he's just really good at it?
Yeah, it's one of these guys you show him once, and plus, I mean, I've coached for a long time, so I know what type of cues. He's a very kinesthetic guy,
right?
So instead of giving him intellectual clues, it's more like feel the pressure here, feel the pressure there. He's very impressive about all the, it's one of these guys I wish we had connected 20 years ago, because I remember seeing some of his first fights, like going, shit, if he had a stronger lower back, he would get in faster.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask you. Like, when you watch fights, do you think of stuff like that? You're like, oh, man, this guy needs to work on this. Or like, man, if he did that.
Yeah, all the time. I mean, it's one of the things that I can't shut my brain off.
Right.
And then, like when I was in Cuba with the female wrestlers, these girls, all three of them won their gold medal, but within 2 minutes, each one of them came to see me to ask for feedback. And when I explained to them what I saw in the fight, they never argued with me. They said, yeah, that makes sense. For example, Yelena had a weak grip. I said, when you fought the German, she was doing this, and then you compensated by this. Or, like, for example, Ronda Rousey is the current world champion. Back when I was in Cuba, which is March, I said, you know what? If you don't work on your lower back, you'll get into big trouble. So she specialized on lower back. And, she hasn't lost a fight since January since I took over her strength training. But she told me after she won the Worlds that all that extra lower back work made her last those 10 months of training without any injuries.
Lower back work as in deadlifts, glute ham raise, back extensions,
all the above.
Reverse hyper, okay. Yeah.
But near the competition, we did a lot of clean pulls from a static start.
Okay.
To duplicate being in a crouch position and lunging for a takedown. We also do these what I call telemark squats from inertia to develop that. And then if you use, of course, your elastic energy by bending the knee a little bit, by bending the lower back forward, that stored elastic energy will also help. But if you're strong from a dead stop, once you use elastic energy, it's even easier.
Yeah. That's just another level of personalization. Now, back to those wrestlers in Cuba, that shows you a real championship mindset where after they win the gold medal, they're coming to you and ask for advice on how to improve. That's amazing right there. Most would be out celebrating. They're like, okay, I won the gold medal, but what could I have done better?
Exactly. They came to see me and say, listen, what do you think? And one girl said, well, we got to work on your endurance a bit. Another one that said you need to work on your grip. And the other one that said you need to work on your lower back strength. And they applied themselves. But when they came back to the gym, once I fixed the goals for them, like, yahoo, I'm going to do something that's going to work for me. Not the other stuff didn't work, but it's better if they can translate the effort. Like, okay, because I said, okay, the work you've done so far has helped you with this. Like, for example, Yelena was able to lock that German girl, and the German girl was surprised she couldn't handle the fact that she was locked in by Yelena. So let's say, okay, this is good, but because of hard work, you never reward performance. I said, because of hard work, and now we need to work hard on this. And then they're all for it,
Yeah. Is there anything you saw in that Holly Holm Ronda fight, right, where speaking of Ronda, is there anything you saw in her performance where you're going, she needs to work on this?
Actually, she's too weak, in my opinion.
Okay.
I know she said public comments that she doesn't lift weights. I don't know if that's true or not, but typically, you saw when she tried to lock her in for throws, Holly was able to basically overcome her.
Right.
I don't. let's say if their camp hired me, I would say, okay, let's test your maximal strength levels. You don't need to go to max if you go to 3RM. And I would say, okay, I can get you this by 4 months. Why don't you work on that? It's very easy to maintain once you get it. And then see what you do. Because, she even tried to put her into locked positions, and then she couldn't do it,
Yeah.
And sometimes, especially when you look at isometric contraction, 1% can make the difference between locking the joint and not locking the joint. So, if you gain 30%, that would do a lot for her. But then again, if I was on the Holmes camp, I would work on her strength. I mean, my daughter said, I want legs like Holly Holm.
Yeah, she's got great legs.
Yeah, so, but you could tell she was much harder as far as, condition than...
No doubt.
Than Ronda. I mean...
Well, if you looked at her workouts in the behind-the-scenes footage, she's doing sprints with her coach in the desert. In Albuquerque, she's doing. They all lift weights over there at Winklejohn's. I don't know what kind of regimen. I know John Jones is doing powerlifting kind of stuff. I don't know if that's standard, but Mark Philippi worked with a lot of MMA fighters here in Vegas, and he told me many times that he was surprised how weak they were.
Yes,
just across the board. He goes, they're not strong at all. They said that they have a very basic level, and then you look at someone like Matt Brown, who we've had on the show a few times, and once he started working with Louis Simmons over at Westside, he said it was night and day. He got so much stronger, and it just allowed him to have much better performances. So I think sometimes in the MMA community they diminish the importance of strength and conditioning, right? They say, well, it's like, it's a waste of time to focus on being strong. You just got to work on your technique and all that. And no doubt you have to work on technique. I mean, that's obviously paramount. But at the same time, very, very good strength and conditioning is another skill set. That's another part of your arsenal.
The thing is that working your technique, okay, how much more is your jab going to improve?
Right.
From doing 2,000 more jabs.
Right.
So let's say if you put in 4 hours a week in the weight room, well, if the force production, once you make contact, is 20% harder than it used to be, well, the guy's brain's going to rattle, a bit more, so you're more likely to...
Well, they always say that it's dangerous for fighters to take steroids because now they have the ability to kill somebody with the additional strength, right? But what if some of these guys started working with you? Now, would that be an unfair advantage as well? Because a lot of them don't work with the strength coach at your caliber or even close. So they start working with you, and now they're way stronger as a result of working with you, not taking anabolics. Yeah. It's like, well, we can't have fighters train with Poliquin anymore.
It's an unfair advantage, Yeah. That's a performance-enhancing coach right there. Come on, man.
Yeah, but the thing is that there's a lot of good strength coaches out there. To make somebody gain 30% is not that hard.
Right.
I think that if they go see somebody who has a record of getting strong, whether they play basketball or football, to do the conversion is not that hard. So let's say Preston Green. He's a very good strength coach with the Gators. You take that guy and you send him 10 MMA fighters, his skill set is so high that those guys would be much better. But he could go see Benton Prentice, who's also very good in hockey, and he would transfer it. I mean, muscles are muscles, and then you get certain motor patterns. And I think the thing with MMA is like, what's the guy's top 3 techniques? And then strengthen those techniques. I mean, I think there is a point of training your strength, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, Hickson Gracie, was fantastic at locking people in different arm bars or ankle locks or whatever. So you assess what would make a difference and you train those. It's time to arm bar somebody who would be much shorter.
Yeah. Now, Hickson Gracie, right? Didn't you work with him for a while?
I didn't work with him. I went to his dojo to train.
Okay.
But unfortunately he wasn't there. But I've trained with Horian and Hoist in Montreal, and and I've been to Enzo's dojo, and he recognized me. I mean, I guess within the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community, I do have some traction, but it's not as much as I would like to. But it's a great that's a great sport to work with, because I don't think it would take that much. Even 2 times 6 weeks a year,
yeah,
could make a huge difference.
Oh yeah.
For what I've seen with the wrestlers, I didn't, because that's basically what I did with him this year, because that's all the time we have. And right now the girls are in China and Mongolia and everywhere else. I won't see them for probably another 2 weeks, and then I'm going to write the next program for the Christmas holidays. It's really hard. The thing is that what makes you a better wrestler is to wrestle. Okay?
No doubt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no two ways about it. But if I can get the girl stronger than 30% of the other girls, then it saves a lot of energy.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, if let's say someone has really good wrestling technique and they keep maintaining that, they don't have to keep improving it, and then you get them way stronger, now they can apply that technique much more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
You know, instead of having to punch someone 3 times to knock them out, now you do it once.
Yeah.
Or instead of having to do 3 takedown attempts to get the person down, now you get it on the first attempt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, if Ronda were stronger in that Holly Holm fight, maybe she would have been able to flip her.
Yeah.
The first time she put her hands on her.
Yeah, that's my take on that. You know, and then, but I have tremendous respect for both fighters. But
oh, no doubt.
You look at the great athletes; they've all had. I think it's really good for Ronda to lose.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's good for her and it's great for the
sport because otherwise people are going to get bored. Okay, they're going to get bored. People are already starting to get bored. You know,
no,
so
it was exciting, man. That fight was exciting. I mean, people were jumping out of their seats because I mean, it was just really exciting to see that.
So now the interest is what's going to happen next. You know, other than that, if she won again, we all would have known what would happen next. You know.
But the thing is, you know, she asked to. I'm sure she's going to reevaluate what she's done and what she needs to work on. And then home, I'm sure camp is going, okay, we won this one, but we're going to do today what the others will copy tomorrow, so we'll do this.
Right.
Whatever it is.
She's in a very smart training camp, right? The most methodical training camp is the one she's in.
Yeah.
So that's what made, I think, a lot of people bet on Holm, is the fact that not just the fact that she's an extremely impressive striker, her background in striking very impressive, but the camp she's in, you know, they're not going to just throw her in there and hope for the best.
Yeah.
They're going to break down every single thing about Ronda they can find and put together a very strategic plan. And what everyone said about Holly is that she executed that plan perfectly, which she did.
That's fairly evident. But
yeah.
And the thing is that I think it's good for the sport because people say, okay, now that champ is defeatable. It's like when the guy first got a clean injured 500 pounds with him.
Yeah, exactly.
15 guys did it. Same thing with a 4-minute mile. But
sometimes you just see someone do something. Like let's say, like, you know, I have a goal of deadlifting 600 pounds, and obviously I've seen people online do it, and I've seen many people do it. But just seeing someone in person do it, you're like, okay, it's attainable. You know, I can do it.
Yeah.
It just gives you that confidence, especially if you see someone who has maybe a similar body type to yours, same height, similar mechanics. You're like, okay, now that I see it in person, your mind starts believing that you can do it too. So I think other fighters are going to start believing. We're probably going to see other people beat Ronda now because now someone's finally done it. While every opponent she's ever had has gone in there going, man, no one's ever beaten this girl before. You know, they gave her way too much respect.
Yeah, everybody was pretty much on the defensive the whole time. Like, let me not get armbarred is pretty much what they had in their mind going in.
They're not thinking about winning; they're worried about losing.
Exactly.
The thing is that, you know, you have your average of 5 people you spend the most time with. So, you know, Holly Holm just raised the average.
Yeah.
And I think that
no doubt
it's going to attract more people to try to take her on. And then, you know, for example, U.S. weightlifting, everybody pisses and moans, you know, we don't make progress, Well, you know, the best way that U.S. weightlifting could do is, A, learn how to raise money properly, but the thing that they need, the reason why the U.S. weightlifters don't do so well, is they don't train in a competitive environment. So I would import Bulgarian lifters who would be happy to eat good food every day.
Yeah.
Seriously. And,
it makes sense.
You know, and then you
put them in the. You hire a bunch of Bulgarian lifters and put them in the training center. You're naturally going to have a higher competitive drive. I mean, it's one of the reasons why a lot of the West Side lifters do so well. You know, Louis.
Exactly.
You know, Louis is very smart, but he also. I mean, who wants to walk in that gym and be the weakest guy there? You know, you're naturally going to go in there and be like, "Fuck, man, I got some stuff to work on."
Like, for example, you're not allowed to train there, and that's a few years back. You weren't allowed to train there on Saturday morning unless you benched 500 pounds.
Yeah.
So, you know, the reason would do so. And then the thing is that, you know, raising the competitive environment makes a huge difference.
It just brings the best out of everybody, right? Like a lot of people like to say, "Oh, there's too much competition. That's why the world is going down the drain." It's like, no. That's not the reason why the world's going down the drain. There's you got to separate competitive drive from being greedy, and screwing. Just because you're competitive doesn't necessarily mean you're trying to screw people over. So I mean, people have to distinguish these things. But like, progress never happens without some level of competition.
Exactly.
I mean, there's a what's his name? Peter Diamandis, I think that's his name. So, I mean, he's putting together these huge competitions for developing all kinds of things to help humanity, right? Where like millions of dollars are on the line, so that you're attracting the smartest people. And it's not just the money that's pulling them in; it's just that competitive drive. It's like, I want to be the guy who discovers that. Right. I want to be the guy who cures that.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think I think what could happen in the context of Ronda Rousey now is that she's finally lost, because I think she was starting to believe what everyone has told her. Like, you know, you're invincible. Nobody's going to touch you. No one's ever going to beat you. And that can't be good for you psychologically, right? Because why would you push yourself hard in a training camp when you believe in the back of your head, you're thinking, I could beat this girl with one arm tied behind my back. You know? Now she knows that's not true. So, like, one of two things are going to happen. Like, one, she's going to be so demoralized where she's like, man, I don't know if I ever want to do this again, which is unlikely, you know, given what a champion she is. And the other is going to be, okay, big time fire under her ass to figure out everything she did wrong, hire the right people to work on everything she needs to improve, and then just come back with some serious ferocity to prove everyone wrong.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be really interesting as a sports bettor, you know, on the rematch, because this will probably be the first time ever that Ronda Rousey won't be the favorite.
Yeah,
it'll probably be the underdog. I mean, there's no reason why she wouldn't be the underdog, given how she got defeated. It wasn't like
it was like a 5 rounds going back and forth, exactly. Where it could have been a split decision or something like that. Yeah, exactly. It was a dominant performance from start
Holly
to finish
the entire time. So there's no way that Holly won't be the favorite. So it's really gonna be dependent on what Ronda does between now and the next fight, on whether she's worth betting on or not. You know, if she just decides to stay with the same people and do the same things, then you could bet your house on Holly, not break a sweat. But if she does all the right things to improve, then it's going to be interesting. Just like with Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo's coming up, right?
Yeah.
Conor's the favorite, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me. But as a guy who likes to bet on this stuff from time to time, I'm like, fuck yeah. You know, Jose Aldo's the underdog, a guy who hasn't lost in 10 years. This is the most dominant guy in that weight class. The number one ranked pound-for-pound fighter is the underdog. I was like, man, you know, this is the kind of opportunity. This is like an opportunity that you look for, you know, when you bet on stuff that doesn't make sense.
That's right.
So now it's like, well, shit. I'm not going to put $21,000 down like this one guy did, you know, who made $240. I mean, although that would have been fun, you know, but I might put a few thousand down just for the hell of it, because it doesn't make sense. But then at the same time, you have to hope that, you know, he doesn't twist his ankle and he comes in injured. Who the hell knows? There's so many variables that could happen. It's like, it doesn't really matter what the spreads are. Like, when the fight actually happens, anything can happen.
Yeah.
So that's what makes that whole thing exciting, though. Yeah. So that now. I know you got to go soon, so I'll just ask you one more question here. Now, I've heard you talk a lot about core training, right? And you basically state that the best core exercises are squats and deadlifts. And that makes a lot of sense. But are there any core exercises you like, such as dragon flags or hanging leg raises or ab wheel rollouts? Do you find any of these things useful, or are you just like, hey, just get strong on squats and deadlifts?
I mean, the exercises you name are like white belt exercises, right?
Right.
They do have an application, but there's very good work out in Newfoundland on that if you're really an athlete, you plateau doing those lower grade exercises after about 8 weeks. So do they have a place? Yes. But once you've done that, I find with elite athletes, and that's before the research came out, that after 6 to 8 weeks, they could probably do any advanced core exercise on the planet. And then,
right, like so people that are strong on squats and deadlifts, they can do dragon flags without ever doing it, or they can do ab wheel rollouts without ever practicing it.
I
Why bother?
That directly, but their conversion rate to that new exercise. I remember Paul Chek being in my place, and he said, "Oh, this is the most advanced exercise." And then one of the hockey player got on his back and put skates on. and did the same leg raise exercise, which supposedly was the most advanced form in the world, and he did 50 reps with heavy skates on, and Paul was like, couldn't say anything because the guy goes, "Is that what you mean?" And he was laughing. So
I take it you're not a fan of doing barbell squats on a Swiss ball, are you?
No, but the thing is that that people mistake training balance as just training core.
Right.
Okay, so, and then the thing is that what's the point of doing these balance exercises where you're throwing out gang signs while you're trying to stabilize yourself? And then
I don't know. Maybe it's an MTV. I shouldn't say MTV because they don't play videos anymore. But like maybe it's a music video. They're working on some moves.
No, but the thing is that I don't think that me walking on a high beam and doing gang size, motherfuckers, what do you think? If I'm an offensive lineman, right?
Right.
So it's like saying I'm going to teach you Finnish, but I'm posting you in Hong Kong. Well, fuck. But if you teach me Mandarin, or Cantonese or something like that. So to do work just to do work, that doesn't transfer.
Well, I think a lot of people say stuff. You hear a lot of trainers say stuff such as, "Oh, you need to work on your core to have a strong squat or deadlift." But my reverse statement to that is, if you work on the squat and deadlift, you're going to have a strong core. How could you deadlift a heavy weight without a strong core, right? Or a squat?
I mean, it's like Kazmaier last week. He always says, "What's the best way to improve your squat?" He goes, "Squatting."
Yeah, exactly.
Next question. It's like
you're going to get better at deadlifts without doing deadlifts? How does that work?
No, it's like people expect you to say an answer like, "No, you need to do 10 Sudoku drills a day, and that's going to improve your squat." Like, there's a magical answer. It's like saying, how can I improve my German? Well, fuck, speak German. I mean, practice German. That's the only way. So the thing is that, for example, when I work at the ski team, going through gates, for the female athletes was is something challenging mentally. But they told me, when they first did arm training, they were, why are we doing arm training? We don't use arm training in skis. But then after the first season, the girl goes, "Hey, training those arms really helped my confidence going through the gates. I can smash them. It doesn't scare me anymore."
Yeah.
So, and then the ski coaches are like, "Okay, you win." But the thing is that they realized that we would do 6 weeks a year of quote unquote core exercises. And after that, the bulk of the core was Olympic lifts, snatches, deadlifts, whatever, squats. And then suddenly all the lower back injuries went away with what they call the technical teams, which is like slalom and giant slalom. So then people said, "Why are our lower back injuries lower?" And let me guess, is it maybe the fact that you got a stronger lower back and not a stronger core? So, and I find that a lot of times when people are inefficient at doing something, they come out with a training method, and if they fail to make gains, they say it's something spiritual. "Oh, you didn't get along with your father when you were 4 years old. That's why your shoulders fucked up." No, hey, I think
that's a great way to cover your own ass. Right? You put someone on a training regimen, say, "I didn't get the results I wanted." I was like, "Yeah, but what unresolved issues do you have that impeded your performance?" I'm gonna start using that with anyone who's like, "Hey, Mike, I tried your T booster, I didn't get anything out of it." I was like, "Yeah, but come on, we know you're suppressing something that happened when you were 8. You need to get that out of your system."
I saw this with a guy named Nameless. Some guy came to see him. I was in his office, and this guy tore his shoulder playing hockey and being a goon. So, his subscapular iris was completely torn. And the guy said, well, so he put the guy on a rehab protocol, and I saw the rehab protocol, and I would not rehab yet, right? And he put in all these core exercises, but the guy's problem was the shoulder.
Yeah, right.
He didn't know how to train his shoulder. And then when the guy complained that he had no results, he goes, well, it's the right shoulder. That means you didn't get along with your father. Unless you resolve your issues with your father, it's never going to work.
Oh, man.
And I thought the hockey player was going to give him a Sherwood sandwich, which basically means he's going to take a hockey stick and ram it into the guy's teeth, right? Which he should have done. But the thing is that, you know, when they have no results, then they blame spirituality.
Spirituality is always the scapegoat, huh?
That's right. And religion is the biggest shakedown for money.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of that, last thing with you, I saw you. I think it was a Twitter post or a Facebook post. You were talking about the horrible events that happened in Paris recently, and you were saying you were tired of seeing posts about, how we need to sit down with these people and have a conversation. And I agree with you wholeheartedly, man. I go, these aren't the kind of people you reason with.
It's like,
did they sound like reasonable people to you? It's like, oh yeah, this is just a desperate cry for talking.
Yeah, right. I mean, luckily Churchill didn't believe that bullshit with Hitler, you know.
Right.
Robbing the fuck out of him until he committed suicide was the solution.
Right.
So, I mean, but you know, instead he's saying, France bombed them. Like, motherfucker, you've known where they are for years. Why didn't you do it then? And then the other thing, how come all these 6 guys went to Syria to train? I mean, turns out that 4 of the terrorists were in Syrian training camps and faked being Syrian refugees. One of them, they scanned him, they proved that he was in Greece on his way to France. I mean, and now you want to put 25,000 Trojan horses in your country? It's like, fuck, give me a fucking break, you know?
I think the Russians tend to have the blueprint on how to handle terrorism pretty well. I remember years ago there was a terrorist incident where a bunch of people were held hostage. So what they did is they found out who the families were of all of the people, all of the terrorists. And they said, if you don't release the hostages, we're going to start killing your family members. And bam, they released all the hostages.
Thus far, we don't hear very many incidents of terrorism in Russia.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody thinks about doing a terrorist act there because it's not going to fly. Plus, and then there was another incident where they held people hostages and they just raided the place. They didn't care about the safety of the hostages. They're like, you know what? We don't want to set a precedent of we're going to negotiate with you dipshits. Right. So we rather just raid the place, take our chances, but you guys are going to be done.
No, it's it's people that you can't reason, so you just fucking take them out. Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, hey, man, we appreciate your time. Thanks a lot for coming on. Another fascinating conversation, and hopefully people will actually hear this one. Because the last one was good, too. But what do you have coming up? Do you have anything going on? We're getting towards the end of the year now. It's Thanksgiving coming up, Christmas. But do you have any courses or any products in the works?
Actually, I'm teaching my last course in Dallas this weekend with Ed Secoda.
Oh, okay.
And then that'll be done for 2015. I'm taking 3 months off.
Fantastic.
And then that's 3 months off from teaching, but not off work. I'm finishing my members only website because traveling so much takes a toll. And let's say a guy in Croatia, you can't get a visitor's permit to take a class in England. There's a lot of people that would like to hear my information, but they can't afford it, or they got family obligation, whatever the case may be, and they'd rather pay $20 to $200 a month to get all that kind of edge information.
Sure.
The thing is, it never replaces in-person seminars where I can correct you or whatever. So I'm still going to have those, but only at the fourth of the exposure I did last year.
Right.
So I'm cutting my seminars by 75%. And we're going to post December 15th, and I expect to sell out probably within a week because I'm not going to teach that much. One thing that I'm teaching that's going to be very interesting is to look it up on the site soon. I'm going to be teaching with Ed Cohn at the University of Hawaii.
Oh, great.
And I'm going to use it as a fundraiser for the University of Hawaii. So the proceeds go to them. The point being is that I've been to the University of Hawaii when I was on vacation, and I was so surprised how low the budget was. I really like the guy. So I said, dude, I'll bring in Ed Cohn, I'll pay for it, and then I'll donate you the money.
This is going to be in, whereabouts in Hawaii would this be?
At the University of Hawaii, in Honolulu.
Oh, okay, Honolulu. Okay,
I think it's the last weekend of January, and it's part of their annual strength conference. But Ed and I
is this on your website now? People can sign up for it.
December 15th, you'll see it.
Okay, great.
The thing is that there's other conferences. I've got one of my best German students, Wolfgang Onsol. He's going to teach on training for grappling sports, which would be interesting. And there's a lot of conferences. And, Ed and I will talk about how do you apply what we know from powerlifting to strength training for sport.
That's great. Ed's a great guy. We're going to get him on the show soon. He's Mark Phillippe's mentor, so I've met Ed in person one time briefly, but Mark has so many good things to say about Ed, and I love watching Ed's training clips on YouTube. His information is incredible.
He's very, very good. I mean, we get along. For some reason, we meet each other about 4 times a year, and he's also a guy you could have really down to earth conversation about training, and it's there's genius in simplicity.
Yeah. Great sense of humor as well. He's a pretty funny guy.
Very dry, but very funny.
Yeah, right.
And then we both love tigers, so we have that in common. And
that's the other thing. That's the other thing you do. You support Serenity Springs out there in Colorado.
Correct. I'm actually adopting a new tiger this week.
Oh, that's great. So this is just so people know, this is a legit sanctuary where they're not breeding. There's actually a lion sanctuary up the road here in Vegas where the good thing they do is they take tigers that used to be, or lions rather, that used to be in the shows here in Vegas, right? So they have a sanctuary. But the bad thing is they breed there for new lions in the shows. So it's not a legit sanctuary.
Yeah.
But that's the problem there. Well, Serenity Springs, my understanding, doesn't do that. So they're taking in rejected animals for whatever reason. Tigers, just tigers, right? Not lions.
They've got every feline,
Oh, okay. Okay.
And we also have some bears and some lemurs. They got some animals. And actually, they got gators now.
Wow.
But the thing is that I think it's my 18th big cat I've adopted so far, and this one's name is Hercules. That's picked by my daughter. And then I've got so many insults on Facebook for doing that. I'm going to do that. I'm just trying to protect the species.
Getting insults for doing that. For what? Why?
Huh?
I'd say these animals belong in the wild. Well, Jesus, they were.
Yeah, they do belong in the wild, but this is a situation where it's either this or a zoo. You can't put them back in the wild.
Can't put them in the wild. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, but at least we have the genetic stock that there's some accidents. For example, we have 3 tigers born. That was a complete accident. But and we had one time. Last year, I adopted this tiger. The mother gave birth, but she abandoned them. It's only when they cleaned the cages they figured out that baby was there for a day without anything.
Yeah.
We didn't feed him, so of course we didn't do kill the tiger. No, so I adopted him. We fed him, and now he's a big boy. And he got 3 girlfriends.
I think people have these irrational notions of what the wild is, right?
Yeah.
Happy family where everybody gets along.
I mean, that's that Disney fantasy. They've watched The Lion King one too many times. I mean, even Mufasa got taken out in that movie, people. Let's do a reality here. Come on.
No, but maybe someday somebody's going to buy enough land and they're safe, and then we could reintegrate them then.
Sure.
As their offspring, but meanwhile, we have to preserve the genetic stock, at least, I mean, last week, the eastern puma has been taken off the endangered species list because it's dead. It doesn't exist anymore.
Wow.
That type of shit pisses me off, but we weren't careful. So, there's nothing I can do about the eastern puma, but at least if I can help some Siberian tigers with Sumatran tigers, good, good for the species. And then, I donate to Navy SEAL Foundation. 10% of what I make, I donate to different charities because, there's no point being the richest man in the cemetery.
Right.
And from experience, every time I donate, I make more money. So I always get rewarded.
That's always been my experience too. I think there's several reasons why, but I think one reason is that you're not afraid to give away money, right?
Right.
So in other words, some people are like they make money and they're so afraid that they're never going to make more money, right? So they have this real mentality of I can't give it to any organization, I can't do anything with it, like this fear-based mindset. My attitude is nothing ever really good comes out of a fear-based mindset. That's always going to impede some successful action.
Yeah, you get what you give, man. It's really just that simple. You can call it karma or whatever. You get what you give. So if you're worried about, hey, I don't want to lose this, then okay, whatever that is that you don't want to lose, that's all you're going to have. Don't worry about it. You won't lose that. But you're not going to get anything else either. So
I remember even when I was broke coming up in the business, I still supported some of the organizations that I was a fan of because my attitude was, hey, I'm not making good money right now, but I have an apartment, I have a car.
I'm not hungry.
Fridge, so I have some money I can give.
Right.
I'm not in a homeless shelter. I'm not sleeping in a tent on the beach.
And you decide the clothes you put on your back today.
Right. Exactly. So I think one thing that stops some people from supporting different charities is because they just feel like a lot of them are scams, which is true.
Right.
A lot of them are scams. So that charitynavigator.org is a good website to go vet companies and take a look at how much the top 3 people make, which is always this pretty strong indicator of how well the funds are being allocated. But there are a lot of good organizations out there. warriorangels.org, Dr. Mark Gordon works with a lot of soldiers to help them with post-traumatic stress disorder. That's a great organization.
Send me the link on that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. Yeah, it's just warriorangels.org, and he's a great guy, and that's a great organization. So, I mean, Voice for the Animals, our friend Melia Kaplan, and she works with Los Angeles police out there to help a lot of abandoned dogs, cats, etc. She does a great job. Great lady.
Yeah, save the chimps.
She lives off $20,000 a year in L.A. That's what she pays herself. It's nothing. The L.A. is an expensive town, man.
Yeah, that's not.
So she's dedicated. She's not saying, well, let me pay myself $200K so I'm comfortable in my Beverly Hills, apartment, and then I'll allocate the rest to help out. So I mean, I think the key is to find people that people should join nonprofits because they're dedicated to the cause, right? They're not trying to make an investment bank or income. If you want to make a lot of money, you go do that. You don't go join a nonprofit to make a lot of money, even though a lot of them have figured out that it's a good angle because you work on people's guilt. It's like, look at all these people suffering over here. So just go ahead and donate your money so I can pay myself $500,000, and then maybe we'll give $5 or $10 to the cause that you're donating to.
Yeah.
Well, great, man. We appreciate you coming on. Thanks a lot. And strengthsensei.com is the website. You got a ton of great information on there, to say the least. And then I look forward to the membership side. I also look forward to that Hawaii course because I've been wanting to get back to Hawaii for a while. And love it.
Off your taxes.
Yeah. I'm definitely sign up to take your course. And then I like that it's going to a good cause as well. So, I mean, that's win-win all around.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for inviting me. Always a pleasure talking to you guys, and anything I can do to help, let me know.
Thanks a lot, Charles. Appreciate it. You take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And again, that's our friend Charles Poliquin. Check out strengthsensei.com. I mean, if you haven't heard of Charles and you're in the fitness business, I don't know what part of the fitness business you're in because he's so prolific with optimal strength training information. I mean, everyone's been influenced by his work on how to get people stronger and better conditioned. And also what you can do is remember what Charles said about, what you said, Sincere, you get what you give. And Charles said that too, and I said that too. Well, I think some of you people need to take that message to heart and actually apply it. There's a couple of things you can do. One, you can go give us a review. It doesn't cost you a dime. Go give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. We should have 500 reviews on there by now. It's like it's been like 193 for like 6 months. We need 500 reviews on there. So the least you can do if you're enjoying the show is go leave us a review. If you're not enjoying the show, then stop listening. It's that simple.
What do you know?
Why are you listening every week and you don't like the show? I don't listen to shows I don't like. If I think a show sucks,
I'm done with you. It's like, get the hell out of here.
And then you can also use that coupon code LLA to take the next step and support our businesses. You can get 10% off everything you see at MikeMahler.com. And how about with you, man?
And the same thing at NewWarriorTraining.com. So other than that, you can also head over to Patreon.com/LLA podcast. And you can support the show on a monthly basis right there, like so many people are doing. What's really funny to me now, Mike, is that out of what seems, every time I get a notice that I'm thinking it's a new Patreon supporters, actually current Patreon supporters who are now upping their monthly donation to the show. It's like they're making sure their head will never go by their ass ever again. Okay, they're putting up ass barriers by raising, what they support the show with. So in that box, yeah, you see like that $1 right there, and that's just like the default thing that they have as far as Patreon. But you know what? Doesn't mean you have to do it. And honestly, $1. Most people say, well, all it takes is $1 when you donate to like a disaster or something like that. Well, that's usually because you have about 1 million people or 3 million people watching. So yeah, that $1 means a lot. But right now, look here, man. go ahead, throw a zero behind that one, or at least start off with $5 a month. And that really helps us with the production, the post-production of the show, us counteracting Skype's bullshit, and things like that. And also, like I say, keeps us doing this show. And we can bring great coaches and great people like Charles Poliquin on this show. And actually talk to him about the shit you won't hear on other shows. Everybody else's show, no matter what. Some of these guests that we've had, I've seen them on other shows, and every show they talk about the same damn thing. And guess what? A lot of times I don't see those people coming back to those shows again either. It's usually a one-time interview.
I was making fun of Ted Rice because he's like, oh, hey, man, great job with Ryan Holiday. That was one of the best interviews I've heard with them. I was like, come on, Ted. It was the best interview. No need to be coy about it. Right? When we bring someone on, it's going to be a conversation, not us just drilling them with questions.
And the same questions.
Yeah, the same questions that we've heard on other shows.
So we're going to do our best to bring out that person's personality, man. So one thing about this show, people can feel safe coming on this show. It's like, look, if you think somebody's full of shit, you can say it. And guess what? No one's going to judge. We're going to be, well, he's really a great guy.
We're not going to bring people on the show with the purpose of a hostile interview either.
No,
we bring people on who we don't like for the purpose of
so we just thrash them.
I'm not down with that shit. I don't like that.
No.
I mean, if I don't like the person, why would we want to have them come on the show?
Exactly.
That's number one. And number two, I'm not going to bring someone on the show under false pretenses. Oh, I'd love to have you come on the show, and then we're just slamming them the whole time. Fuck that shit. That's some Fox News crap right there. Don't do that.
Or any media outlet, pretty much at this point.
I'd rather uplift people that I think are doing great things, whether it's in the fitness business or a nonprofit organization or wherever the context is.
Yeah, I don't have time to sit there dealing with some ass fuck. I'm sorry, man. I'm just not interested.
I mean, there have been some people who we thought were pretty cool, and then we had a little dialogue, and we're like, what the fuck is wrong with this person? Man?
Exactly.
This little diva response. I was like, what the fuck was that? It's like, no, you're not coming on the show.
And as always, I know you're probably wondering, like, oh, I wonder who you guys are talking about. Well, it's going to be hard to find out because they'll never be back on the show. Yeah.
And why would we give them exposure?
Exactly.
Mentioning them.
Exactly.
Oh, one more thing to plug is our friend Dr. Julio Garcia. He recommended. He sent us an email about a great coffee company called Grounds and Hounds. And what they do is they donate 20% of proceeds to help abandoned animals.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, man. I got some of their coffee today. I got the Paper and Slippers. Paper and Slippers. I'm trying to see what's in this here. Let me grab it real quick. Yeah, it's just one of their flavors, and it's a medium roast. It's the flavoring that they list on is brownie, toasted walnut, blackberry jam.
Yes. So those are all the varieties. So those are all the characteristics. Those are the things. See, that's a good thing about it. When you buy quality coffee, when you get quality coffee, you'll recognize those things. You'll taste it and you're like, oh, I taste a hint of this. I taste a hint of that. You won't get that from a cup, from some coffee you get from a red cup that everybody's bitching about because they don't have Christmas on it. And you guys know what company I'm talking about, Starbucks. So, you can't get any characteristics from their coffee other than it tastes like shit or it tastes like deep shit. Okay, for the most part. And you probably brainwash yourself thinking like, well, it's okay. No, it's not. So, I love it when I see that.
I made a cup of this coffee in the Triador today before the show. Tastes great, man. Incredible. Like, it's been getting a little bit colder out here, so I've got coffee back in my routine. So I cut it out for a while because I like to phase things out. And so sometimes people are like, hey, Mike, I heard you don't drink coffee. And then other episodes like, oh, hey, I heard you drink coffee. And they're like, well, which one is it? I was like, depends.
It depends what day you call, what day you ask me. Just like people think I drink coffee every day. I'm like, no, I don't. Because first of all, I don't want to jack my adrenals up. And number two, I don't want to get to the point where I just don't appreciate it. To the point my tongue just gets freaking numb to it. So, no, man, I rotate, but I went on that site. I'm sitting there. My biggest problem, especially I just came back from Santa Fe and I bought so much coffee out there from a really cool coffee shop. And then we stopped in Dallas on our way back home and there's so many great coffee shops there. So I'm thinking, I'm one of those people like, I don't want to have coffee that's not going to be consumed within the first 3 weeks that it's been roasted. Because otherwise,
cover for a year or something.
Exactly. So otherwise I can drink Folgers. It's going to have so my thing is I want to taste those characteristics that are on there. So I've had the page, 2 Grounds and Hounds like open on my browser so I don't forget. So,
but you don't want to drink Folgers because that can lead to lapses in judgment. I mean, who knows what you'll do next? You may endorse Primal Bells or train with them. It's a slippery slope, man.
Oh man. Tomorrow, or next time I do, I might start throwing butter in my Folgers. I don't know, man. Just all types of confusion can happen.
you you may take it a step worse and put margarine in there for Christ's sake.
Exactly. You know, especially, I'm vegan now. So, yeah, I got to put, like, wait a minute. We got to do this for the vegans now. So why don't we put margarine in our coffee?
Well, I'll tell you what, man. Chorito, what I do is I make some good coffee in the Chorito. I'll add a teaspoon of coconut butter for a little some taste. Just as basically my equivalent of a creamer, right?
Right.
And then I'll put a little bit of chocolate rice protein powder in there. Usually on mornings where I go sprinting, I'll just have that first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Take some beats, go running, feel great, man. It's just a nice mood lifter. There's something nice about having a hot cup of coffee on a cold morning too.
Oh yeah, or
just a warm feeling.
Or just having something warm when you first wake up. Just start that flushing situation right off the bat, man. You're like, whatever you had the night before, you want to go ahead and get that working now because it's been hanging out with you for about the 8 or 9 hours that you've been sleeping, hopefully. Just want to go ahead and get that going.
I'll tell you, a great morning cleanse is what I got from
that lime and water, right?
Yeah.
The salt water?
You take a lime, you squeeze it into a glass of water, and then you put I think it's about 1/4 of a teaspoon of sea salt, Himalayan sea salt in there. Stir it up, drink that first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
If that doesn't clean you out, then I don't know.
You got some
what's wrong
issues.
with you,
That's a good test right there to tell you just how clogged up you are.
Yeah, man. If that doesn't clean you out, I don't know what will. So you have that first thing in the morning, then you have your cup of coffee. You should be cleaned out twice.
Yeah, pretty much.
You should be experiencing a double cleansing each morning and then have a great way to produce your day. Because some of you people are full of shit, literally. And that explains why you haven't given us a review or bought products from us or doing anything productive with your day, because you're literally full of shit. It kind of makes sense now, right? How are you going to do anything productive?
You're waiting for a dump, man.
That's what you're making. I was like, man, you need to go listen to some hardcore music, some death metal, go do some deadlifts, and go take a good grumper, and then you're going to have a productive day. So I mean, I think this should be the routine, man. You do the lime juice with sea salt. You get some good coffee there in the morning. You go get a great workout in, and then you're going to have a great workout because you cleansed out all the stuff that's going to hold you back from having a great workout. You know what cracks me up is when someone's taking a crap at the gym. It's like
that's okay. Let me tell you something, man.
That's what you had to do in the middle of
let
the
me tell you. First of all, look, man. This is the industry right before this one. There was a rule. Okay, when I was DJing, rule number 1: you never take a dump at a club. Ever. It's the worst place in the world to take a dump. Just get over it, hold it.
The worst, man.
The worst.
Punk rock clubs.
Hip hop, any club.
CBGB's in New York City, that place is notorious. I don't care if you had explosive diarrhea, man. You ran around the block and looked for something else.
Those bathrooms so bad, you don't even want to take a leak in one of those clubs. You're like, you know what? I'm just going to hold it. I'm going to stop drinking right now. I can't even stomach and hold my breath long enough, man. So the second worst place to take a dump is a gym. Because guess what? 9 times out of 10, especially if it's not a big commercial gym, if it's a small gym, everyone knows it's you. Okay. So when you come out.
Remember when we did the Age of Quarrel course?
I was about to say, Ken.
And then the bathrooms right there are like right next to where everyone's standing around when someone's instructing. So, I mean, you
open that door,
looking over to see who just came out.
Well, you can see their essence. You can see the fumes and the aura of their funk around their body as it is. It's just like, oh, man, dude.
Our friend Kim Blackburn's like always a guy who has to take a crap in the middle of a workshop.
Yes.
It's like, oh, hey, can you take over for a second? I got to go. You hit the head. I was like, why?
Sin, can you demonstrate this? I'll be right back. I'm like, no. Especially at my gym. I'm like, no, don't.
I
you
used
can't.
to wake up 2 hours early before I taught.
Yeah, I do
too.
too.
Make sure I got everything out.
Yes.
That's the last thing I want to think about when I'm teaching.
Look, man, any course I do, even if I'm attending someone's course, I don't want to sit there. I can go that whole day without having to go to the bathroom because I make sure I get everything out first thing in the morning. I give myself 2 to 3 hours, man. I refuse. So
I also have somewhat of a paranoia of public restrooms.
Yeah.
I will go out of my way to avoid using them.
Yes. There's not enough toilet paper in the world to shroud those freaking lids, man, to make me feel like, oh, okay, I'm good now. I'm still like,
I can be on the strip, man. If I have to go, I'll drive home and then go back.
Well, I mean, come on. So we had an experience on, the course we taught last year, man, where I was telling you, like, hey, man, how far are we from your house? And, there were a lot of places to stop, but trust me, I was like, nah, man, we got to get to your house.
No, I understand the mentality. I was like, hey, we'll go back. I get it, man.
I was dying, man.
You want to be in a comfortable environment.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
You don't want to be in an environment where it's really uncomfortable and you're like, oh, this is disgusting.
It's like, I know you, and I know how you feel about bathrooms too. So, I mean, you and I, we talk about the people people who go in bathrooms don't wash their freaking hands. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Why didn't you wash your hands?
All the time.
What the hell? You just had your hand on your freaking junk, and then you touched that toilet seat that 50 million other nasty motherfuckers have touched. Come on, man. And then these are the people that come out like, hey, man, how you doing? Want to give you a dab. Like, no, don't touch. What? Put that hand back where you found it.
That's why the fist pump was invented.
Exactly. Well, I don't even do that now. It's just like more like
that's not good enough.
No, I throw a flying elbow now. It's kind of like this little elbow throw. We like elbow to elbow now. So thank God for Muay Thai teaching me that technique.
Oh, man. Hey, we should do a whole show on this topic.
Yes, to the poo episode. Okay.
Those of you that tuned in to listen to Charles, this was some bonus material that
there you go.
All right, we're going to wrap it up, and we'll talk to everyone, or we'll see everyone, or you'll hear from us next time around.
All right, folks. Take care.